Well, my proper name is Constance May Turner, and I'm 82 years of age. Well, I applied when I was 18 to start nursing, because that's when you started your training then. And they turned me down because I had a stammer, a speech impediment, I stammered. I tried again. It was actually rumoured that the matron was an alcoholic. She wasn't very nice to me at all. And when I went back the second time, she said, I can't have you because of your speech impediment. You've got a speech impediment. And of course it was much worse then. I don't stammer now. But while she was busy talking to me, she went to her cupboard in her office, opened the cupboard, and out fell all these bottles. And I saw what she obviously didn't want me to see. And I think that made her think a bit more, and she decided to give me a chance. Probably to keep my mouth shut, I don't know. I started off to train to be a state on-roll nurse, which was 2 years training. And then later on in my career, I decided to do my SRN, and I did state registered course. Anyway, I started my training. There was a lot of carrying on between the nurses and the doctors. Yeah, and they used to put the glass to the floor. The doctors' quarters were below and the nurses were above, and you could hear what was going on down below. All sorts. It was Scarsdale Hospital then that trained the state enrolled nurses. And most of them were geriatric patients, elderly patients. And I remember one of the orderlies saying to me, "You aren't going to have some trouble when you get older, you're only a titch." And obviously, when I did get older, I started having lots of back problems because of the lifting. But I had a nurse come tell me once, called Nurse Smart, and she asked me what she ought to do, because I wouldn't sit in the office. I used to sit in the middle of the ward because you couldn't see the patients, all the patients from the office window. And I said, well, if you could collect the teeth up, because most people then had false teeth. They got the pots with their names on. I said, if you could collect them up, wash them, and then in the morning, give them out again, because they'll all be fresh. She came to me. She obviously didn't tell me what she'd done until morning, and she said, I'm ever so sorry, nurse, but to put them all in sync together. There were 40-odd men on that ward. They didn't all have false teeth, but I should have gone off at 7. I was there till 9 o'clock sorting these teeth out. I've never forgotten her because her name was Nurse Smart. And every time I stammered, my father hit me. He slapped me across my face. If you can't talk properly, be quiet. And he hit me. I was frightened to death of him. He was really nasty man, cruel man. He'd only got one arm, he was born like it. Whether that had anything to do with the way he was, but he was horrible to me. Anyway, when I started nursing, I decided to try and get speech therapy help. And I went to see my GP, and he referred me to the speech therapist clinic. And I went there for quite a while. And then my GP had done a course on hypnosis. And he asked me if I'd like to try it. Well, his name was Dr. Lockie. He was a nice, kind man. And he said, let's try it. And I think having the confidence in him and the confidence in myself, it helped me stammer. The patients were all brilliant. They were just odd ones that were used to copy me. But I learned to accept it, get on with it. But when I was working on outpatients, you used to have to shout the names into Plaster Theatre or wherever they'd got to go. And I used to stammer them sometimes. And there was a new consultant. He was an American Jew. He'd come over here during the war, and everybody was frightened to death of him. But when I went back in one day, he said to me, "Why do you stammer?" And I explained what had happened to me. And he said, you just remember that you're as good as anybody else. But I'll never forget how kind he was. I mean, I was only 18, so. Oh yeah, I couldn't afford a fob watch, you know, a nurse's watch when I started training. And my granddad gave me his pocket watch, which he had on a chain, like they used to have a pocket watch in his pocket, and he gave it me. And he had to live in the nurse's home then for so many weeks, and it got stolen. I never got it back, never found it again. I think he's got it on that picture there. But he was like a father to me, Andrew. He was a lovely man. He seemed to started me gardening as well. They used to take me up gardening, show me how to plant plants. And I've still got his horseshoe that was on his coal house door. Well, he used to take me to church on a Sunday, but he didn't go. Go in there, Alcon, and say your prayers and be a good girl. And then at evening time, he'd take me to Burdome Working Men's Club and get me up to sing The Happy Wanderer.
When you were going to church, where was he going?
To the pub.
Didn't he say that was his church?
Yeah, he was to go to the pub, Working Men's Club. But he worked on the railway for 35 years, I think he worked on the railway. So he knew a lot of railway men. And the clubs were, well, they were like family, really, a lot of the people that went. Well, I went to one elderly gentleman, and sometimes I'd take my dog with me in my car, and he used to say, bring her in, Duck. I says, no, I'm not allowed, you have to stay in the car. And I said to him one day, I'm desperate to go to the toilet. He says, there's a commode in corner, Duck, I can't see very well. And then he'd come outside when I'd dressed his leg, he had a leg ulcer. Dressed his leg, he'd come outside with me, go in the garden, put his straw hat on, and go and get me some veg out of the garden. Then I went to another little boy, and that was a burn on his bottom, he'd be about 5. The husband went out the room, and his wife said, my husband put the electric fire on his bottom. It was a nasty burn. Obviously I dressed it, told them when I was coming back, I had to report it, and they got the little boy took off them, took him to care. And when I went the next time to collect my equipment and my dressings and notes and that, got to go and pick up, he got hold of me, this fella, and pinned me against the wall because obviously I'd reported him. And so I kneed him in his what's-its hard. I faced him to the floor. He weren't a very big man, he weren't as big as you, but I've never forgotten that little boy, he'd be a man now. I was coming out of a patient's one day. I was looking through the window and opposite was a park, and I could see these youths on this park, and I thought, what are they doing? And they'd lit this fire, and I went across, and I says, what are you doing? He says, we're going to roast this cat on this fire. I says, you're not, you can give it to me. And I took it off the shoe, he'd be about 18, and took it home, and I had it a long time. I went to see this boy's mother to tell her what his son had been doing, because I knew where he lived. And she says, well, it's only a cat. Oh, sometimes we get men on that have been circumcised, and one said to me, I bet you've never seen one like this before. I says, I've seen them all, long ones, short ones, forgotten ones, neglected ones. He says, you're not showing me anything I've not seen before. I went to this, it was a lady I went to, and her husband always came down to the front door to open the door, and then he'd go outside, and opposite the door was the stairs, and we didn't wear trousers then, we wore dresses. And then I realised that as I was going up the stairs, he was looking at my skirt. So I refused to go in the front door again, I went round the back. But they were mostly elderly that were like that, it weren't young men. I think they were having a last fling. I could have stayed on till I was 60, but I was having a lot of trouble with my hips then, so I had to retire. Yeah, I always wanted to be a nurse, right from being a little girl.